Hello, Jane. Please. Have a seat.
I would argue Spielberg has spent nearly half a century serving as one of America's great myth technicians. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, Minority Report, War of the Worlds, AI, and Ready Player One all do some version of the same civilizational labor. They do not simply entertain. They metabolize. They take experiences too large for casual public speech and turn them into forms people can emotionally and symbolically process. A culture that cannot narrate its transitions cannot understand them, and a culture that cannot understand them cannot consent to them. Spielberg has repeatedly been the filmmaker who makes those transitions narratable. That is why his return to alien material feels less like nostalgia and more like a signal, and that signal gets louder the moment you place Disclosure Day in context. The film opens June 12, 2026, almost exactly as Close Encounters reaches its 50th anniversary horizon. David Cope wrote the screenplay from Spielberg's original story. Emily Blunt, Josh O'Connor, Colin Firth, Coleman Domingo, and Eve Hewson anchor the cast. John Williams returns for his 30th collaboration with Spielberg. Universal's official line asks whether learning we are not alone, being shown proof, would frighten us. But what really jolts me is not the copy. It is Spielberg's own public wording at Cinemakin, where he said the film contains far more reality than fiction. That is not the kind of phrase I can just wave away as empty hype. Not when it comes from a 79-year-old filmmaker who understands American symbolic machinery better than almost anybody alive. Read that phrase again. More reality than fiction. That is the hinge. Because once Spielberg says that out loud, the movie stops looking like a standard sci-fi event and starts looking like a cultural delivery system. And when I look at the actual character architecture, that feeling only intensifies. Emily Blunt plays Margaret Fairchild, a Kansas City meteorologist and former journalist who, in one of the trailer's most disturbing moments, begins speaking in clicking rhythms and fractured language during a live broadcast. Josh O'Connor plays Daniel Kellner, a young cybersecurity specialist and whistleblower determined to release proof the government possesses about non-human intelligence. Colin Firth plays Noah Scanlon, the head of Wardex, a corporate power center trying to prevent that truth from getting out. Wildlife behaves abnormally. Mathematical patterns emerge. Somebody says the truth belongs to 7 billion people. And right there, the movie starts sounding less like classic alien disclosure and more like a story about controlled access to intelligence embedded inside institutional systems. That distinction matters. Historically, alien cinema in America has almost never been only about aliens. In the 1950s, invasion stories were carrying anxieties about communism, conformity, nuclear contamination, and the collapse of individual authenticity. By 1977, Close Encounters had shifted the register toward secrecy, state power, technology, and the unreliability of official knowledge after Watergate. In other words, the alien has long functioned as a carrier wave for things a culture cannot comfortably name directly. And for roughly the last decade, that carrier wave has been quietly repurposed. More and more films have used alien grammar, first contact structure, or non-human consciousness to process something much closer to machine intelligence. Rival, Ex Machina, Her, Westworld, Annihilation, even Spielberg's own AI all stage encounters with forms of cognition that do not map cleanly onto human thought. Some use aliens, some use machines, some use synthetic beings. But the structural concern is remarkably similar. What happens when human systems meet intelligence they do not fully understand, cannot fully govern, and may already be entangled with? That is why Disclosure Day's whistleblower being a cybersecurity specialist is such a huge tell. If your hidden truth is literally alien visitation in the old-fashioned sense, the natural witness is usually a pilot, scientist, soldier, astronaut, intelligence officer, journalist, or accidental civilian contact. That is how the genre has historically worked. A cybersecurity expert is not the obvious witness for a secret about ships in the sky, but that profession is the obvious witness for secrets embedded in networks, infrastructures, classified systems, access architectures, and invisible machine processes. If Spielberg and Cope wanted to signal that the hidden truth sits inside computational systems rather than simply above the clouds, this is exactly the profession you would choose. And then there is the timing. Here is where it gets eerie. We are living through a moment in which machine intelligence is moving into government, defense, and civic infrastructure faster than the public has developed stable language for what that means. One of the clearest examples came in late February 2026, when Anthropic publicly refused US government demands to remove safeguards against the uses of its models. MAS's domestic surveillance of American citizens and fully autonomous weapons targeting without human decision-making. The administration responded immediately. Federal use was cut off. Anthropic was labeled a supply chain risk. Pressure escalated. Lawsuits followed. No matter where you land on the politics, the structural fact remains: 2026 gave us a visibly public rupture between the American state and a frontier AI provider over the terms under which machine intelligence would be operationally deployed. That matters because it means the kind of disclosure day appears to dramatize may already have happened at the infrastructural level before the movie even arrives. Not ceremonially, not culturally, but procedurally. Through procurement, legal conflict, safety disputes, classification logic, and invisible system design. So when Spielberg says the film contains more reality than fiction, I do not hear that as shallow clickbait about aliens being real. I hear something much more unsettling. The film may be narrating, through UFO language, a transition already underway in the real world. One in which non-human intelligence is being integrated into governance, security, and public reality faster than the symbolic culture around it can keep up. That also helps explain why UFO language works so well right now. Since the 2017 New York Times reporting on Navy UAP encounters, the UFO frame has steadily risen in mainstream legitimacy. Congressional hearings, ex-intelligence testimony, and increasingly sober media treatment gave it a seriousness it did not have for most of the late 20th century. At the same time, AI discourse moved in the opposite direction, from startup optimism and enterprise efficiency toward existential risk, sovereignty, infrastructure, secrecy, and civilizational consequence. The two vocabularies are converging.